Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Community America Life Skills webinar series. My name is Matthew Newkirk, and I'll be one of your hosts today. We're glad you're taking a little bit of your time today to get some answers to your questions about education and what comes after high school. And before we get going, I want to introduce the team that have made today possible. As I said, my name is Matthew Newkirk, and I'll be attending Mizzou in the fall to major in broadcast journalism.
My name is Jack Loudon, and I'm going to be at Blue Valley West High School, and I will be a senior this year.
My name is Jackson Schuster, and I'll be a freshman at KU in the fall, majoring in economics.
My name is Eka Josette, and I'm going to be a senior in the fall at Washington University in St. Louis, double majoring in biology and global health.
Awesome. So today's session is on education, and we have split today into multiple sections. First, we're going to be talking about what to look for in a school. Then we're going to be discussing ACT and SAT tips about standardized testing. We'll talk about scholarships and building a resume. And then finally, we're going to discuss community college options and an option if you don't want to go to college or it doesn't feel like it's right for you. So if you have any general questions at any time today, we have time reserved at the end of the webinar to answer those questions. You can ask them using the Q&A feature inside Zoom, bottom right of your screen. And if you see a question that you like, we encourage you to upvote it instead of asking twice. That'll help us be more efficient and get to the questions that everybody wants to get answered. And before we get going, we do want to let you know that this event, including any materials provided, is for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the presenters. They do not reflect the opinions or views of Community America Credit Union. And so with that, we will get it going. The four of us want to start this webinar by just telling you our own college stories and our experiences with either looking for or going to college. And so hopefully it's insightful to hear our real world experiences, because that's how we found that you learn the most about this college process. So I'll now hand it over to Jack, who is going to tell us his college story.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, I'm going to be a senior this year. So I've kind of been looking at a bunch of college stuff and trying to figure it out. And, you know, I've always been interested, or I've always had a difficult time figuring out what I wanted to do for college, because I've always been interested in stuff like innovation and entrepreneurial type of things, but I wasn't sure if I could go into college for that. Like when I thought of entrepreneurs, I always thought of, you know, guys who didn't go to school and started their own business and how they're all big now. But I kind of tried to focus what I was going to do in school around that. And I thought, you know, it's all about business. So I decided that I would go into business and major in that. And so that was the reason for that. And since then, I've been doing a bunch of virtual tours of different schools because I couldn't travel. My dad and I had planned to go on kind of a road trip and look at a bunch of different schools this summer, but COVID hit and we were unable to do that. So I've been trying to research and look at a bunch of different schools virtually, which has been super helpful. And then along with that, I've been doing a bunch of ACT stuff and trying to gain as many real world experiences as I can, because I think that's just going to help me in the long run get ready for school.
Yeah, that's absolutely a great story. For me, from a young age, I'm kind of unlike a lot of people where I knew that I wanted to do journalism from a very young age. And I researched that field through the internet, through family members, mostly through conversations, and that kind of confirmed journalism was what I was looking for. And I wanted something that would give me a lot of real world experiences. So I'm picking a school based on the degree that I want. And I know that, like I said, journalism isn't so much about where you get the degree, but the experiences and the connections that you make. So I looked for top schools that would have these connections. I very quickly ran into a lot of coastal schools, Syracuse, USC, Columbia, Maryland, Northwestern, you know, all the big journalism schools, but they also have a very high price tag. And so I knew that I wanted to limit the amount of debt that I would be going into. So kind of left me with three choices. I had Mizzou, Arizona State, and Phoenix, and I had Oklahoma. So last spring and fall, I visited all three, tried to figure out which one was going to be best for me. Oklahoma just wasn't the right fit for me. I just went to the campus and pretty quickly realized that it was not going to be a place where I would, I don't know, I just didn't feel like I would fit in there. ASU was really, really cool in Phoenix. I had a great time. I enjoyed looking at a totally different part of the country, seeing all the connections, the urban feel, the great weather, the new facilities. All of that was great. But when I went to Mizzou, I definitely just got the feeling that that was where I was supposed to be, and that the opportunities and experiences would be there. That, you know, the legacy of the journalism school was something that I really took into account. So just looking at all of the aspects and just making a decision based on what I felt was best was really important to me. And also I had a lot of opportunities for scholarships at Mizzou. I felt like the communication was better too. They definitely were more interested in me as a person than a number. And I felt like at ASU, it might've been the other way around. The biggest shocker for me, honestly, was hearing stories of kids that had been to Northwestern or kids going to Mizzou that knew people that went to Northwestern and just didn't really like the feel of some of those big schools, but really liked the feel of Mizzou better. So it's crazy that, you know, they picked something that was cheaper and it's about the same or even better than something that was twice as expensive. So that's kind of my story, and that's where I am now, excited to go to Mizzou in the fall.
Yeah, I wish I had an approach more similar to Matthew. I unfortunately did not. Around my sophomore and junior year of high school, I set my bar really high, and I shot for Stanford, U Chicago, schools of that caliber. I worked my butt off for clubs. I took the ACT too many times, would not recommend it. And I just kind of went with the flow. I ended up getting rejected from quite a few of them, but luckily I applied to KU just on a whim. My parents went to KU. It was like my safety school. I ended up meeting with one of the engineering representatives. We went and got coffee in Lenexa, and he kind of taught me about all these things. So I ended up applying to the honors program, not really thinking I'd ever go there, but just to have the application done. But then as December, January, February, as they passed my senior year, I realized KU was the option for me. I got into the honors program. I learned about all the amazing incentives. And so even though I didn't get to Stanford or anything like that, I'm so ecstatic to go to KU in the fall, even though I was going for engineering. And then I met with the engineering representative the week before I made my schedule, and I changed my major to economics, and I haven't looked back yet.
In terms of dream job for me, I've pretty much known that I wanted to work in the medical field since fifth grade, just because we did a project once where we had to research the brain, and I just became super fascinated with the human body. As far as picking WashU as my dream school, I guess my intentions behind it initially, I think were for the wrong reasons personally. One day in 8th grade, I was just researching colleges that I wanted to apply to because I'm a planner, and I basically put most of the schools that I found on the top of a rankings list. So WashU became one of those schools. But throughout high school, I visited about 4 times, and I began to see it in a different light. With each visit, I just felt more comfortable with that environment. So it became my dream school in that sense because my interactions with the students and faculty were great. They had programs that fit my interests and would also allow me to learn outside my field and to explore other interests. And while WashU was my dream school at the end of the day, I was still uncertain about my attendance when I had to decide where I was actually going to go to. One, because of the list price, and also because other people try to push me into committing to other schools that they thought had bigger names. And then entering college, one of the biggest shocks for me was time management and just learning how to study. While in high school, of course I studied, but it was never super intense and I could get by with a lot of last minute review, but that is not the case in college at all. For one, the pace is a lot faster, with each lecture covering about 3 days worth of information compared to high school. And sometimes you're just taught the basic information and you're sent off on your own to learn the rest of the material for yourself. And also as a varsity athlete, that threw in another hurdle because I have to dedicate a significant chunk of my day into practice and competition. So my first semester, of freshman year was definitely a time for me to experiment and determine what my priorities were, and just to get everything together the following year. Now I want to introduce our guest speaker, Carley Scholl. She is the Education and Career Planner for Community America Credit Union, and Carley will be sharing her expertise throughout the entire webinar today.
Thanks,
Thank you, Carley.
Eka. Yes, I'm the college planner at Community America. I've been here for about 3.5 years, but prior to joining the credit union, I have worked on college campuses since 2004, worked in 4-year schools, 2-year schools, private institutions, public institutions, always in college admissions. So I've been the person at the high school recruiting you in the cafeteria or in the evening, night college fairs, all the way up to a director of admissions and everything in between. So campus tours, student ambassadors, high school visits, financial aid. I've seen it all since in the time that I've been in higher ed, and I feel like I do the same job now for the credit union, but I don't represent an institution. I am helping our members find the right fit for them, but it's not necessarily the school I'm working for at that time. So it's my most favorite job I've ever had. I would call it my dream job, even though I never set out to have this job. So very happy to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. You're definitely going to be a great resource for the students watching. In the 4 stories that we just heard from us students, it was evident that everyone had a different reason for choosing their dream school as their dream school. Your reason for having your dream school might be different from someone else's. So don't allow someone else's perception of a dream school or a dream job to affect yours, because everyone values different things and different aspects of education. If you value prestige in terms of the name, then that might be your primary motivation. It could also be the environment, maybe what's nearby and what the community is like, distance from home, programs that they offer that align with your interests. But the most important thing is that your dream school or job is exactly that, yours. Carley, what other factors should students consider when choosing a dream school?
I would echo that it is unique for every student, even if you have siblings who have gone before you or very close friends who have shared similar experiences. I would say that your experience is still going to be unique from theirs. So definitely identifying where you want to be. And one way I do that with my members is helping students visualize what kind of life they want in their 30s, when they're past their college experience, when they're past that first job, when they are what I would consider an established adult. What do you want that life to look like? And then we work our way back from there. And part of that is, what kind of job do you want? And I would argue that the only reason you need to go to college and pay that kind of money is to obtain a degree, a formal degree or certificate. I think that there is value in education regardless of whether you earn the degree or certificate. However, if you're going to pay this kind of money, you're going to get some type of credential. So number one, while it is your path, you really need to have an idea of where you want to be so that you choose the path that's going to get you where you want to go. If you haven't thought about what kind of career you want, then how do you know that the school you're at is going to get you to the type of training you need to be able to do that job? And then the most important thing, in my opinion, having worked with hundreds of families on the college planning piece, is the cost that it is to the student and the family. And I say that because what I don't think high school students understand, and even a lot of parents who are helping them navigate this, that a student can only borrow so much in their own name. And so once that federal student loan is offered to the student, and it's only $5,500 for your freshman year, if your family needs, if you need more money than that $5,500 student loan, then someone an adult with credit history is going to have to borrow for you. That's to say, if you don't have savings, but college costs so much that most families don't have the savings to cover all 4 years or even 1 year. And so families do borrow. And you need to have a conversation as a family unit or whoever's involved in this decision in terms of paying for it. What is our limit going to be? And then seek schools that fit your career needs within your budget. And I would say that you can make it your dream school. So several of the students who are here with us today were looking at other schools and then settled on their state school that was nearby, which may or may not have been their dream school when they started out. But I have no doubt that you'll make it your dream school if you embrace it and take the opportunities that come to you. I mean, you could get in, like Jackson was talking about Stanford. He could have gotten into Stanford, but you can sit in your dorm room in Stanford just like he could sit in his dorm room in KU and not take advantage of anything. And so it's really what you do as a student once you're there, and partnering that then with the cost, so that while you're having an incredible 4-year experience, I don't want you to pay for that experience for the next 40 years or have your loved ones pay for it for the next 10, 20 years. So trying to balance creating a dream experience, but not paying for something that's only going to last in the grand scheme of your life, a short period of 4 years.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought up the financial part of applying to college. We'll definitely get into that in a few minutes, but I just wanted to bring Matthew in because I know he has some experience with choosing a college based on career versus the name. Matthew, could you speak to that a little bit and why that was so important to you?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously, like I said in my story, when I was looking for journalism schools that were high ranking, that had a lot of experiences. You could have an internship, you could go to a TV station and work right there in the field and kind of make connections, because that's what a lot of journalism is about, and increasingly what other fields are about, I feel like. So I looked at the big schools, I looked at the Northwesterns, the Syracuses, and tried to see, is it going to be worth the extra money to have Syracuse on my diploma instead of Mizzou? And I quickly realized that the answer to that was no. And maybe it is for some other degrees. And maybe that's, something that's really important to other people. But for me, it just wasn't enough of a draw to make that extra financial commitment and to be putting myself in a position where I would be having to pay it off over a lot of years. So I think just looking back on that, I'm definitely happy with my decision to go to Mizzou. And I guess one other thing is that right now there's so many schools that are moving classes online. I know about half of my classes at Mizzou are going to be done sitting in my dorm room because of COVID and everything. So I think that might be something to consider for somebody looking at a college in the next couple years, just because, classes may be online. You may not have that full experience. So I think that is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. And just one thing that stuck out to me and between what both Carley and Matthew have said is that you should look at your end goal, and then once you have that in mind, you can go forward to choosing the college, the program, just the path that's going to lead you to that goal based on what's important to you. One thing that shocks students when applying for college is definitely the price. I don't think I was fully aware of how much college costs before I started applying. But depending on where you're looking at, the price could range from very affordable to shockingly expensive at first glance. And when schools present their costs, I think for the most part, they often include tuition and room and board, but the rest of the expenses that they include are estimates. So sometimes it can be difficult to get a complete picture of how much you're actually going to have to pay. So I think it's really important that you do thorough research regarding the actual costs to make an accurate comparison. But more importantly, don't misconstrue the list price for the out-of-pocket costs. Carly, what are some ways that students can offset the cost of college?
Yes, so you are definitely right in realizing that a cost of attendance is very different than what you will likely pay, which is the net price. And so don't eliminate a school from your list based solely on the cost of attendance. Go through the process, file the FAFSA, which we're going to talk about that application, but that will get you in the mix for scholarships and grants from the federal, state, and institutional level. You can do work study, which means working for the institution, collecting a paycheck that way. And you can certainly work through for the school and it not be work study, just like a part-time job. But then scholarships, private scholarships. And when you're looking at scholarships, there are thousands of dollars out there, but spend your time on your institution scholarships. So by filling out an application for the institution's admissions, you will likely get thrown into the mix for some of the automatic scholarships. Those could be based on the academic information you complete or demographic information, location, but then secondary, look at your institution's competitive scholarships and see what things you could apply for in addition to the automatic scholarships. So you might have to write an essay or attend an interview, or maybe you are a student athlete like Eka, you're an athlete. You may be anything that requires you to do additional steps applying for admission would be considered a competitive scholarship. Those two scholarships are where the bulk of your scholarships will come from. And scholarships, remember, are funds that you don't have to repay. But then beyond that, you can also look for private scholarships. Keep in mind, if you're looking at private scholarships, that some private scholarships may affect any money you get from your institution. And so you need to talk to your financial aid office before, accepting scholarships. And I know today we have not just high school students, but college students as well. And I tell my college students, you should be applying for scholarships all the way through completing your program, because there may be scholarships that are not eligible to freshmen or first-time college students that you may be able to apply to as an upperclassman. So talking to your department, your faculty, and then just simply your financial aid office to put yourself in the mix for those upperclassmen institution scholarships.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all great points. And so we want to kind of try to help you visualize this if you've never ever seen a financial aid statement. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, and we're going to take a look at my actual real student financial aid statement. And this came out March of 2020. So just to kind of give you an idea of how long it takes to actually get this information. And obviously, the total numbers are redacted. But it gives you a good idea of what we're looking at here. So this came March 25th. This number right here, Carly, you can talk a little bit about that, but this is called expected family contribution. So when you fill out the FAFSA from the government tells you what they expect your family to be able to pay, and then the school bases everything off that, right?
Yes. Very simply, if you take your school's cost of attendance, so Eka was talking about the cost of attendance, which is what you see listed here in Matthew's letter. You've got meals, housing, so room and board, tuition, and then books, supplies, and personal expenses. Those 5 things are the categories that have to be included in a cost of attendance. Mizzou has included loan fees for you, and they've broken out their meals and housing, but the general lump of those 5 categories, that's the cost of attendance. And compare that to your EFC. And if your EFC is below the cost of attendance and there's a gap, then you'll see funds offered to you from best to worst. So you may see a grant, obviously your scholarships. If they're is still a gap after those are applied, then you may see work study, or you may see a loan. And then if you have another gap, you may see a parent loan. But the EFC is just based on your financial aid application, what the government says based on your financial situation, how much money you can bring to the table. And then Mizzou, in this case, took that, compared it to what they're going to charge Matthew as an out-of-state student, and that's how they decided to award him what he got.
Right. Yeah. And then it is good to keep in mind, when I first read this, I see this price here, $47,000. I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of money to pay for just 1 year of college. But you have to keep in mind that, firstly, all of these numbers are estimates, especially the tuition is out of state, so that can go up or down. The housing, you can have a different plan. Meals, you can have a different plan. Transportation, it's putting $3,600 here. Well, if I don't get a car, maybe it's going to be less. So, they have to say all of this stuff, but in the end, it may not actually be that number. And then a lot of it can come from scholarships too, to get your number down. So at the end of the day, they actually are estimating my costs a lot lower because of some institutional, like you said, competitive scholarships that I got for simply writing an essay. And I didn't think I would get much of anything, but I ended up getting a couple institutional scholarships, which turned out to be really good. And I've talked to a lot of people who said they got them as well. So the institution definitely gives you quite a bit of help. And then this one would be based on residency. So it's just good to keep in mind that 47,000 isn't really what to judge a school by right at the beginning.
Absolutely, Matthew. And I'm so glad that you used that example, because as your words just now were, that's a lot of money. And yet Mizzou, for you, we assume it's going to be a great experience. And maybe 4 years from now, you'll say, it was my dream school. It was the dream 4-year experience. But you may have written that off if you would have just looked at the cost of attendance. And yet you're paying half of that, or, less than half of that, probably because of the estimates. And, like you said, if you don't take a car, you can get those estimates down.
Yeah. And one more thing I'd like to add is, if the school brings back your financial aid report and you feel like they're not giving you enough money, or they're kind of overestimating what you can pay out of pocket, don't hesitate at all to request an appeal and ask for more. I've done that pretty much every year. And most of the time, they've come back to me and offered me more money. Because the worst they can say is no, but even worse than that is not receiving more money because you never asked. And the students watching are probably wondering if financial aids and scholarships actually make schools more affordable. And the answer is yes. Take my case, for example. Besides WashU, KU was one of the schools that I applied to. And although the list price for WashU was about 5 to 6 times the price of in-state tuition for KU, once I combined my financial aid and scholarship awards that WashU offered me, it ended up being only half the out-of-pocket cost of KU. So I say this all to emphasize that you should never let the list price of a school deter you from applying or actually attending, because there is a lot of aid available out there. So do your research and apply for as many scholarships as possible. The last thing I wanted to talk about in terms of choosing a dream school is college visit. So college visits are very important because there's a lot that you can miss from not actually stepping foot on campus and interacting with students, faculty, and just doing your research online. Unfortunately, in my case, 7 out of the 9 schools I applied to were out of state, and 6 of those were either on the East Coast or West Coast. So I was actually only able to visit 2 schools, with one being WashU and the other being on the East Coast, but that was only because I was flown out for an admitted students overnight weekend. And although I couldn't visit those schools, I did extensive research and talked to people that I knew that either attended the school or had connections. Jackson and Matthew, how did you approach your college visits?
Yeah, so I guess I'll go ahead and get it started. So my college visits, like I said, I made the short list pretty quickly down to Mizzou, Oklahoma, and Arizona State. And that was really helpful so that we didn't have to waste resources on going to schools that I knew just were not going to be possible for me. So I had it down to those pretty quickly. Obviously, Mizzou and Oklahoma, we were able to drive and just do a trip. One thing that I would recommend is that you should try to maximize the amount of time that you're there and try to do maybe even multiple tours. So you do one tour with the school and then try to make a connection with somebody that you know and get kind of another tour from a student's perspective. So it's not filtered through, what the university wants you to see. So I know for when I went to Phoenix for Arizona State, we did the schools tour, but then we also found a friend of a friend that was in the journalism school at ASU, and she took us around and gave us that student perspective, which was really good. And then for a longer trip like Phoenix, my family combined it into a spring break trip. So we were able to see spring training and some of the other things there. And it was good to get a feel for the city as well, because that's what helped me have a better feel for my decision. So I think those two things, having a short list, maximizing your time, and are really important. And that's how I was able to do my visits.
Yeah, so mine is kind of like yours, Zeka. A lot of the schools I applied to, I didn't have the time nor like the money to go visit all around the East Coast, all around the West Coast. So the only schools I never went on an official college visit, because by the time I would have, COVID-19 kind of stopped that process. But some of the schools I toured around the country, I didn't tour as like a potential student, but just seeing what I liked about the campus, what I didn't when I was on like family road trips. And so even though I never really took my official visit to KU, I'd grown up within like a half hour. So it's always a pretty close drive. So I've been to the campus multiple times, and I just knew from the community I would love it there.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad Matthew brought up pairing his trip to ASU with a family vacation, because that's something I recommend. You and your family could always make a college road trip out of it, so you can use it both as a vacation and an opportunity to hit a bunch of schools that are relatively clustered together. So that'll help you not only make your decision, but also save money in the process. But now virtually no tours are happening. So there have been more and more virtual tours springing up that are available for free. So I'd advise everyone to take full advantage of that. And I know, Jack, that you said that you've done some virtual tours. So could you speak about that for a little bit?
Yeah, I've done a few of them, and it's nice just to see. It's definitely not the same thing as going and stepping foot in the campus, but it's good to see what the campus looks like. And along with the virtual tours, I've done more research just about what's around the college and if there's anything interesting like mountains. I did one of Colorado University, and I love the fact that there's a bunch of stuff you can do outside of just going to the school. And then along with that, I think hopefully I'll try to get some tours in that aren't virtual. And the biggest thing my dad said was that we'll try to stick to virtual, but if there's a school we really like that's out of state somewhere, then maybe take a road trip down there and see it. And it doesn't even have to be with the tour if it's not happening, but maybe just walk around the campus and see what it's like.
Yeah, thank you. So as you've heard from my three peers, just having a feel for the school is very important before either you decide to apply or actually attend, because you don't want to go to the school for the first time in the fall and realize that, oh, this isn't really the environment for you. But thank you all for your expertise and really good advice. Now I'm going to send it off to Jackson to talk about standardized testing.
So yeah, standardized testing is one of like the things everyone talks about during their high school time, but you might not exactly know what it means, especially lately. There's been so much going on with coronavirus and all that. A lot of schools you've probably seen on the news are testing optional. And so quite a few, I can imagine, don't maybe know what that means. And so for the past few years, quite a few like Ivy League schools have become testing optional, which means they'll accept your ACT, SAT scores, but it's not like a mandatory thing. And so for kids who are thinking about going to that school, or even if they're going to a state school, but that state school has become testing optional with the coronavirus, just because they say they don't need it, I would still recommend, if you're able to definitely take it once or twice or 3 times, because even if your score doesn't help you get into that school, there are so many scholarship opportunities that can be awarded to you just from your ACT score. For me personally, I got a really good scholarship from KU for my ACT score. And so even though it's not necessarily a mandatory thing for you, I still think you should be able to practice, try to perfect yourself, and then take the ACT/SAT, whichever benefits you better when you're ready. And to help do that, at the end of this presentation, we've given you a quick tip guide. We'd still recommend you getting official practice, but this is to give you a start, because even though it might not be mandatory and it might never be mandatory again, the benefits are still there. So Matthew, I know you're probably taking the ACT a few times. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I took the ACT 3 times, and I took a lot of practice tests before that. I guess I should mention that. And the last practice test and the first actual test I did, my score jumped by 5 points, and that was because I had done a prep course, and I had done a lot of prep work getting ready for it. I didn't kill myself trying to study for it, but also I put in the time and tried to just learn as much as I could. And so that's why, all of us have created a tips document for you that we're going to be sending out at the end. It's 3 pages of just really good information that has nothing to do with knowing math facts or, English rules or anything like that. It's just ways to not cheat the system, but ways to, help yourself go faster through it and try to maximize your opportunity to score well. So that's a really big thing. And I think honestly, because of that, my score was able to jump up. I know Eka has something to add.
Yeah, so I like you, I took the ACT a few times, but one thing that I did that now looking back I shouldn't have done was the first time I took the ACT, I didn't study for it at all, and I went into it like, oh, I'm just gonna take it to get a baseline. And one, that's just a waste of money and time and resources. There are practice tests available for that. So I'd really recommend being efficient and really utilizing your resources and going into every test as confidently as you can to try to get the best score possible.
Thank you both. And I will add to that, if your school, I know some schools do, some schools don't, but if your school happens to give you an actual course dedicated for ACT prep, whether it's optional or mandatory, I would definitely recommend taking it. I know myself, the first time I took my practice test in that class, and then the last time I took the official ACT, my score jumped 9 points, which is very big when it's added 36 points. And so it's just one of those resources that might not seem very fun at all. It's not, but it'll help you so much in the long run. Carly, do you have anything you would like to add about the ACT?
I second what all of you have said about taking it seriously. And while you can decide which test goes to the college, it costs money to take these tests, and so definitely take them seriously. But also, it can save you tremendous amount of money in terms of the scholarship. So like Jackson, your jump was probably huge in the money that you're going to get over 4 years, because a lot of the freshman scholarships are renewable over multiple years. And so maybe a difference in your ACT is just 1 point, but it earns you another $1,000 scholarship, but over 4 years, that's actually $4,000. So testing is, in terms of money, is so important that it's taken seriously, and definitely take advantage of your prep courses, study on your own, and just make sure you prepare. Review the resources that the students are going to send out afterwards today. I think they'll be really helpful.
Thank you, Carly. While we're on the subject of scholarships, I'm going to toss it to Jack, and he will talk about scholarships and resume building throughout high school and college.
Yeah. So building a resume for me has been something I've been doing recently because I think that's one of the biggest things besides the ACT when you're looking for scholarships and getting into school. All the colleges really look at your resume. So I was wondering, Carly, how can people set themselves apart when they're building a resume?
I think it's important to identify your theme, like what makes you you. And having sat on committees before that review these resumes for scholarships and admissions offers, I would say that it really doesn't matter what your thing is, as long as it's something that you can get excited about and speak passionately about. And truly, it can be anything. If there are parents watching, help your student identify what makes them them, and then learn to talk about it to someone like me or just another adult. Learn to tell your story, and you can use your resume to figure out what your story is. What has been the consistent theme over your last 4 years or so. And then also what's really important in terms of using your experiences to write your essays or to write your short answers is what changed in you after you went through an experience. And so, maybe you were part of a club, and how did it change you, and how do you act or think differently now? And being able to identify why that piece is on your resume. Like, why is it important to you? How did it affect you? Where are you going from here with it? And then always tying that to what can the institution offer you to further develop that interest or that passion. The schools like to, they like to hear that too, about why are you looking at us and what do we have that's going to make you a better Jack, pursuing what you want to pursue.
Definitely. And I think along with that, it's really important once you get into college, don't stop building your resume because you'll need it for a job afterwards. And for the kids who aren't in college yet, even if you're a freshman in high school, start building that resume early, because I think it's really tough once you get to the end of high school, senior year, and you're trying to think back like, what was I doing freshman year? And it's just a lot easier if you have a list that you're keeping all throughout high school.
I would add too, Jack, that it is likely going to be multiple people contributing to this this brainstorming, because you're right, you can't remember everything that you've done, but your parents may remember something. And so, involving the people who have been a part of your experience in high school or college, involving them in this to help you build that resume.
Yeah, for sure. So going off resume, that's a big thing for scholarships and scholarship opportunities. So what are some of the best ways, in your opinion, for kids to find out about different scholarship opportunities?
So as I mentioned earlier, the best place to go for scholarships is your institution. And so when you are looking at how you're going to spend time preparing for college admissions, which will include applying for scholarships, I hope, designate time first to your institution's competitive scholarships. So these should be listed in their financial aid site. A lot of schools just link it straight from their admissions site. It would be something like freshman scholarships or first-time college student scholarships. If you are starting at a community college and transferring, then you would be looking at transfer scholarships. There are a few elite institutions that do not offer scholarships. They would offer grants, and that is going to be based on your EFC. So you may, regardless of your merit, your talent, you may not get a scholarship, a merit scholarship, because it's their policy not to award merit scholarships. But the majority of colleges do offer merit scholarships, and you can find those on their financial aid sites. If you still have time and you want to apply for other scholarships, check with the people around you. Do your parents' employers offer scholarships? Does your employer offer a scholarship? Here in the Kansas City metro area, we've got a lot of organizations that offer scholarships locally. And so, finding those out, looking, where are you involved and does it offer a scholarship? And then lastly, looking through the private scholarship searches, so like FastWeb or scholarships.com. I mean, there are tons out there. They're all free, so don't pay for a private scholarship search, but create a profile, be very specific to who you are, and then let it run. But when a scholarship comes back that it may fit you, go directly to the link instead of assuming that, FastWeb has all the appropriate information. Go to the actual direct source to get that information. But don't start on FastWeb and not apply for your institution scholarships, because the bulk of a student's funding comes from the institution, and that is where your time is best spent.
Definitely. I think that's a great point. And I know my dad's work has a scholarship opportunity that I would have never known about if he didn't tell me. But yeah, the sticking to the institution is a big point. So going off that, if anyone's interested in building a resume now, I know we're going to attach some resume building templates in the exit links. So just be ready for that. And I think we're ready to pass it on to Matthew for talking about community college or not going to college.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, community college and no college, it's something that a lot of people don't talk about, but it's definitely an option for higher education or what's next for you after high school. And so I want to bring in Carley because of her experience in the field. There's definitely this misperception out there that going to a community college or not going to college at all is some kind of failure, or it's less than, it's not as cool as going to college. Why do you think that is, and how is that wrong?
I think it is just like all other misperceptions. Someone hears someone say it and it just gets repeated and repeated. And rather than maybe going on a campus visit to your local community college and seeing for yourself, you just take the word of someone else. Having worked on both 4-year and 2-year college campuses, there are 2-year campuses that offer res halls. A lot of them don't. And so I think it comes down to what you want in that experience. And I can understand if you have your heart set on the traditional experience where you live on campus, and then you, for whatever reason, you end up at the community college that doesn't have on-campus living. I can understand why that is disappointing. However, there are so many perks that come with starting at the community college. Number one being the cost savings. So the community colleges offer associate degrees, which is a 100 or a 200 level class. And those classes are accepted across the country, from all the 4-year institutions. And so if a 4-year institution is going to accept a class from the community college and say that, yep, this is good enough to fulfill our requirement, it is good enough. They're all accredited by the same, Higher Learning Commission, and it's at a fraction of the cost. And so it all goes back to having that conversation with your support unit and determining what are your priorities. And if cost is a priority, then you should consider at least looking at a community college because it is so much less expensive. But keep in mind, as we talked about briefly, freshman scholarships are renewable. And so if you are a high academic achieving student, you don't want to just assume that going to the community college is going to be cheaper, because a lot of schools, while they may have a transfer scholarship and you would get that transfer scholarship upon leaving the community college, it may not be as good as the freshman scholarship. And so you really need to look at the 4 years and the cost over 4 years and then make your decision. But until you know what the cost savings is going to be, you just can't make that decision because you don't have all the information. And for me, cost really should be the number one thing a family makes their choice on.
Yeah, absolutely. And my personal experience with community college is I did a dual credit course with my high school where I did college algebra. It was taught by a teacher at my high school, but it was put on by Johnson County Community College, and there was an instructor that would come and proctor the tests. And that class, I believe it cost about $300 to do at JUCO, and at Mizzou, that class would have cost $900. So you can see the savings, obviously, that you have. And by the way, that's an in-state cost for Mizzou, so it would have been more for me because it would have been out of state. So with all of that in mind, you can get ahead, do 2 years at a community college, and then move to your really dream school. Or maybe you find out that you like the community college experience. So I think there's a lot of options, and I know a lot of people that have done community college, especially at Johnson County, for 2 years, and then they'll go and do the final 2 years at KU or some other place.
Mm-hmm. And it depends, what you fall in love with career-wise may not require a 4-year degree. So I would argue you don't need to go and spend that money, but you still may need some type of training, but maybe it's an associate degree or a certificate, and then get into your field, start earning money, get your experience. And if you ever find yourself needing a 4-year degree, your associate's degree will never get taken from you. So it's a foundation that will be there forever, and you can build on it. But it all just comes back to where do you want to be, and what does that career require? Absolutely.
So I want to bring everybody back on now, and we're going to take some questions. I know you guys have been patiently waiting to hear your questions answered. So here we go. Jackson, take it away.
Alrighty. So our first question today is, how do I know if graduate school is right for me, and what are the steps I should be taking during my undergrad years to prepare for it?
You want me to answer this one?
Yeah. And I'll have Eka because I know she's going to med school afterwards.
Perfect. Well, I think just like what I said to Matthew just a couple seconds ago, if you need a graduate degree, then there's your answer. If to do the job that you want to do requires a graduate degree, then there's your answer. If it isn't required, then consider going to work in the field and gaining some experience, because I do think you'll find more value in your graduate work if you have some real life experience in the field. Plus, there are a lot of employers who pay for their employees to go back and get continuing education. Community America, we pay $4,000 a year for undergrad, $2,000 a year for graduate. So if I wanted to go back and get an additional graduate degree, Community America would pay $2,000 of that each year. So you need to know where you want to be, and then is it required? Obviously, Eka, for you, it's going to be required. So do you want to talk about what you're going through this senior year in college?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on just like getting my application together. I have to take the MCAT before I can even think about applying to schools and getting accepted. But a few things I'd recommend, for one, basically all schools offer students an advisor. So even if you don't go into college knowing exactly what you want to do post-grad, like your second, third, fourth year, you'll definitely have an advisor or career planner that's available through your school that you can go to, and they can point you to different resources and things you should do. So like my pre-health advisor told me that I need to start volunteering or last year, and that these are the different experiences I need for my application. So they're super helpful. And another thing I'd say is if you at least have an idea of what field you want to go to or pursue, you should definitely network, because people who are already in the field are some of, if not the best resource, because they've already been through everything that you are going to go through. So they can recommend activities for you to engage in, places for you to apply, and just really act as a mentor to get you to your end goal.
I'll add on to that one before we go to the next question. One of the things that drew me to KU for economics, they have an accelerated master's program where you can get your master's in the fifth year instead of a 6th year, which saves a lot of money long term. And basically the only thing for that is they have like specific requirements you do for like your third and fourth year of college that are slightly different than if you were just getting your bachelor's. So like depending on the school, they might have specific things that you'll do, but you'll be aware of that before you do it. For our next question, at what grade can you start applying for scholarships? And Matthew, do you have anything?
Yeah, sure. So for your school, you can start applying for scholarships when you are admitted. Your school should give you information about applying for scholarships. I know for Mizzou, what they did is they have one big long form that you fill out, and they ask you questions like, why do you want to go to Mizzou? Or what do you hope to gain from this experience? Or, list some qualifications that you have, blah, blah, blah. And then they pick based on that which scholarships you get. So that's kind of how they did it. I know other schools do it differently where you apply by the scholarship. You have an individual one for each. But I do think most schools do one form and it's due at a certain date. I think it was due December 1st of last year. So Carley, what's been your experience with all the different schools you've worked with?
I agree that you don't need to apply for college scholarships. Well, the bulk of the scholarships you're going to apply for will be after August of your senior year in high school. However, there are a couple places like Unigo is one of them, and we can include these in our resources. Raise Me, you may have heard of the micro scholarships. Some of those are available for younger students, either scholarships you can use at the time of, or that can be applied in the future when you attend college. However, you can do a lot of your scholarship research early. And so most that December 1st deadline, it's probably been December 1st for many years. And so you can do all the research for the types of scholarships you think you're going to apply for, do that your sophomore, junior year, so that your senior year, you know exactly when you're going to apply rather than doing your research your senior year as well.
Thank you, Carley. This will be our last question for today, and it says, how do I know what scholarships to apply for, or do I just apply for everything? I'm going to send this one to Matthew first, because yesterday when we were talking, he made a comment about orthodontist scholarships in North Carolina, and I really like that one.
Yeah, I applied for an orthodontist scholarship in North Carolina that I just happened to find, and it did not go well. So I'd never heard from him again. And I think, honestly, it's good to apply for scholarships where the party involved. So like if, maybe your high school has a scholarship. Obviously, we've talked a lot about institutional scholarships from the college you're going to. That's important. But any organizations that you're in, maybe your church or your synagogue offers a scholarship or something like that. Really, even your orthodontist may offer one. So I guess you never know, but always look out for those kind of opportunities.
Yeah, and also I'll add, make sure you qualify for the scholarship before you apply. Otherwise, it could be a waste of time. So I'm pretty sure all scholarships have a list of requirements that you have to meet for them to even consider you.
Right. And one thing is that a lot of them are need-based. So they look at your FAFSA, and if they see, you have to express that you need help from the government, or you need help from other things. And there are a lot more need-based scholarships than there are purely based on merit, although they do exist. All right. So with that, that concludes our 5-week life skills webinar series. So we hope you have enjoyed it, especially everybody that's been on for all 5. You guys are rock stars. And the team at Community America is already working on some new ideas specifically for students. So be sure to complete this week's exit survey, which will be going in the chat momentarily. So be sure to work on that so that you can stay in the know for upcoming sessions and offerings. Also, if you attended or watched all 5 sessions, congratulations, you have earned your $25 Visa gift card. So you can expect to see that gift card in your email inbox next week. More details will be included in the follow-up email after this session. For today's session, we will be sending out the link in just a moment like I said, the exit link and our resources document that includes our super cool ACT and SAT tips, the valuable information right there. So all of us tried to put our brains together and put up that series of tips. So be sure to check that out. And we have a ton of links for you, as well as a link to contact Carley, who can help you through this process if you have any other questions. And with that, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate all of you. Have a great summer, and we hope to see you soon. And we are going to answer this question real quick that has been asked. So we'll hit that one, and I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat. But Jackson, you want to go ahead and take care of that one?
Alrighty. For the last question, it says, does the school you're going to have you take it, or do you take it when you want to? I'm assuming they're talking about the ACT or SAT. So I'll say they don't. It's independent things. You sign up for the ACT yourself. You can do it online. You can have your counselor help you. You can have your parent help you. You take the ACT as many times as you want, and then you send your scores to the colleges, but they will never personally have you take it.
And I know for my high school, we had one or two ACTs that were through our school, our high school. So, and I think most schools do that, where you won't have to go take it somewhere else, but they'll offer it to you for free, I think.
Yeah. The state of Kansas, I know, offers it. I don't know what they're doing this year or how it'll be in the future with the coronavirus, but usually they'll offer an ACT usually in February to April. It's a free ACT for everyone in the state of Kansas. But every time you take it, it's completely independent of the college you plan on going to. Alrighty. I think we're done.
I think that wraps it up. Sorry about that link. I have the new link now in the chat for the exit survey. So please be sure to fill that out and grab your $25 gift card. And with that, we will say goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.